There is sunshine outside today, and it is a good day. Gosh, risers and thrivers, I am so happy to be back with these recordings. We are kicking off season 3 today, back by popular demand. We have been so appreciative of your heartfelt comments and the gratitude that you've extended for us featuring the show. And it's such an honor for us to be here because the mission of the show is always to inspire and empower and support you in going through your hard days. And together we really are stronger. I know from my own journeys of relentless adversity and having to navigate seemingly insurmountable feats, we can all feel so alone, even when we're enveloped by, worldwide forces of support and of strength. But unless we're really connecting with those who truly understand the depth of hurt and the depth of hardship that we're experiencing, we can still feel so alone. And so here on this show, we're really here to propel tools of resilience, and to share these stories and to really open up on the topic of hardship so that you don't feel alone. We can all cast such judgment on ourselves, and hopefully this show helps us to switch that judgment to a greater sense of self-compassion in knowing that, life is so incredibly beautiful, but life is also so hard. But we're not alone in the face of our struggles. And our amazing guest today, Rachael Huish, who is here. She is well known under the Instagram title, The Battle She's Won. She is a social media influencer with over 375,000 following on TikTok alone. She serves as a online fitness coach as well. I think I'm going to sign up soon. And she also offers motivational training and coaching programs. So definitely check her out if you're not familiar with her. She is here to share all about her tools of resilience and her awakenings and all the struggles that she has faced over the years, including childhood trauma, being bullied, literally having to raise her own siblings, teenage pregnancy, grief, the loss of her sister to addiction, her niece, dealing with an abusive relationship, then having, the relationship ending and having to reinvent herself. And above all, she is a single mom of 5 children. And if you see her out there on social media, she is like the closest relationships with her children, and she just thrives despite all that she navigates. And we can't wait to hear how she does it all. Rachael, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm just so honored that you're kicking off season 3 for us. And you're really just the perfect example of what we try to bring forth on this show, right? And what we're trying to do with the mission of why we're here. And I'm really honored that you're here with us. So thank you again. Rachael, can you take us back? So maybe start with that childhood trauma that you endured as a little girl, and how did you experience it? How were you feeling in that time? How did it impact you?
Yeah, so I'll start when you're going through something, you don't know you're going through it, right?
Fair.
Yeah. So when you're a kid and you're experiencing it, you're looking at it through younger eyes, and you're seeing everything as a reflection of you, and you're the problem. So as a kid, and I've always been empathetic. I just carried everybody's emotions. I can feel everybody's emotions, whether it was my parents or my siblings. And so I grew up with a father that was an alcoholic, amazing man. He's in recovery and has been for a long time.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. He's amazing. And my mom just, she had to work all the time. She had to do what she had to do. But again, me being a child and carrying the weight of not being able to go to school all the time and staying home to help with my siblings, neglecting myself. Like, I was partly extremely bullied just because I'd go to school so stinky and tired. And there's so much to it. But again, I think I've healed so much from it that when I talk about it, it doesn't feel as painful. So if I can't put it into words, it's because I have done the work to heal those parts of me.
What did it feel like? Do you remember, like, when you would walk into school on those days?
Oh yeah, it was lonely, and I knew going home would be just as lonely. So I didn't have somewhere safe to go.
Right.
I remember I'd go to school, and the majority of the time I would hide in the bathroom stall when I was younger. I wouldn't even go to class. And I'd sit alone at lunch, or I didn't even go to lunch. And then I'd come home and have all this emotion, but I couldn't drop that weight anywhere. I couldn't share it with anybody because I didn't have a safe person. Maybe I could have, but at the time I saw everything else that was going on, and that was just more of a problem or a burden to deal with. So my sister,
Let's pause there for a second, because you've really highlighted some really important aspects already, right? You said you didn't feel safe. You felt really lonely. You had nobody to talk to about what you were going through, right? And we all can end up with these feelings of a lack of sense of belonging, lack of sense of self-worth, and then to not have somebody to talk to about it. You said you didn't have that safe space to be real about your emotions. And what happens in that time, no matter what we're going through, right? Obviously, Rachael went through a lot, but whenever our emotional needs aren't being met, right? Rachael was this tiny little girl, you just almost want to, you hear this story already and you just want to pick her up and give her a hug. And I bet that's what she desperately needed in that time, right? But when she wasn't getting that from this lack of safety with her emotional needs that she needed to be filled as that child, she would have then had to develop these coping mechanisms that she did of, going to hide in the bathroom and building these walls around herself. And we all have to do that in the immediate time to really survive those present moments and to adapt and cope through it. But over the long run, sometimes those mechanisms don't serve us. And that's why it is so important along the way to really carve out and really advocate for yourself, to have that safe space. As whether you're a child listening to this show or an adult, create that safe space within yourself and within a small community of people to be really real about your emotions and to really create that space of vulnerability, because otherwise these coping mechanisms, that's all we can do, right? It just builds and builds and builds. Sorry, I just really wanted to highlight on that right from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a constant fight or flight, just
constant.
You're never settling in or sinking into something healthy. You're just waiting for the next thing to happen, and you're ready before something happens.
Yeah.
So.
And then you're constantly in the state of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that impacts how your brain develops. That impacts everything going forward. It impacts how you trust other people, everything. And again, like we talked about, your own self-worth.
Oh yeah, how you see yourself, that self-love. And that's why as a young girl, I looked for love in all the wrong places.
Right.
When you hit a certain age and you start seeing men to fulfill a role for you, whether it's not healthy because you don't know something healthy, but that is what you start looking for because internally, you need it. You need to feel safe. You need to feel loved. And wherever you get that, you're going to search for it, whether that's drugs, right? To let go of some of that pain, or finding a person, whether they're healthy or not, to just love and create that high for you for a minute.
Of course, it all comes down to what you said from the get-go, right? That safe space to have your emotional needs met and to be really open about that. And when they're not being met, we look to other sources, like you just said, addiction, or, anything that even people shop too much. That's another source, right? Of filling that gap of self-love, or eating too much, right? We all look for it in different areas. And so when we struggle with things in life, it really helps to look back on our past, because we can feel so much judgment, in that phase of how we're showing those coping mechanisms, whether it's shopping too much, whether it's eating too much, whether it's looking for love in all the wrong places in terms of men and what we're doing in that sense. We can all cast a sense of judgment, but we can also understand where that's come from and really switch to a point of compassion. Again, for that little girl, Rachael, who just needed that hug that she wasn't given, and that really helps us identify that self-compassion and connect with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, when I got pregnant with my son at the age of 17. And it was the first time in my life where I knew it wasn't about me anymore. So when I got pregnant, it was just like, I need to give him a love that I never had.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of it. I remember sitting in that hospital room. The bio dad walked out when I told him I was pregnant, and just sitting in that hospital room, never having that feeling in my life, and holding this tiny infant in my arms and looking into his big brown eyes. And I was so lonely that night, and just like praying to God, holding on to this little boy and making endless promises that I was going to give him something that I never had. And
Wow.
and him and I did it alone for 2 years. And then I met my ex-husband. But that process was healing to me because I was in control. I could give out the love. I could do something different than I ever had.
Well, it's also that element of human connection that
Yes.
you hadn't really had before that point. And that just sounds like such a profound moment of awakening almost too, and recognizing what you weren't given. Yeah, powerful. And you two are quite tight, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's big on TikTok because everybody watches us, but we're just emotionally connected because we've gone through so much together.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and so then you met your husband.
I did. Wonderful guy. But I was young, right? I was still looking for that connection. I had a baby. I was in a religion that they told me if I didn't do A, B, C, and D, I wouldn't be able to have my baby with me forever. So I'm looking for specific men so I can make sure I can keep my child with me forever. And I was just confused. But I knew my son had a connection with this man. And that was enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was the first man he would ever go to, and their bond was indescribable.
Wow.
So, now it's like he was meant to be his dad. Maybe not my life partner, but his dad, who,
Okay.
has never made him feel anything but he is everything to him. So,
I love that. So he really supports him.
Yes, and he adopted him when he was 3.
Ah.
Yeah, and we were married 8 years, but it was a hard 8 years. And I will chalk that up to because I got out of dysfunction. I didn't know healthy coping mechanisms. I put myself in counseling because I knew what I was feeling came from all my trauma. So
Right.
I sought the counseling out. I was doing self-help every single day because I just wanted to not dissociate. I wanted to be connected. And I wouldn't say it was just me in the marriage, but I was young and figuring everything out and learning how to be a mom and learning how to be in a normal functioning household that I wanted to create.
Yeah, that's so important. And that too is so powerful. Just seeking out, finally having that awakening to seek out those healthy coping mechanisms, right? And I think every single time we make decisions that aren't congruent with our inner beliefs or what we know to be, best for us, every time we make those decisions that deep down inside we know aren't serving us, we become more and more disconnected from our true selves, right? And so it's that reality check of, okay, are my decisions serving me? Are my decisions congruent? And so in that 8-year marriage, what were some of the healthier coping mechanisms that you learned along that course of the marriage?
I started my self-love journey during that and truly going through counseling. And I've always been able to self-reflect. That's never been a problem for me.
Yeah.
And I probably do it sometimes too much, where you want to just put the blame on yourself.
Yes.
For everything.
Yes.
And I just got to the point where it was like, at the end of the day, I need to be able to connect with my kids. And the first 2 years of my marriage, I was so dissociated. I was working hard and trying to overcome the dissociation. But if life felt overwhelming, I just learned from a young girl how to pull myself away from the situation emotionally and mentally. I started doing EMDR as well. And I would
Tell me
say,
about this. What's EMDR for our audience? Tell it.
okay, so it's rapid eye movement, and it's not talk therapy. They just take you back. I won't explain this good.
That's okay.
They take you back to an event, and they're like, how painful is this? And associate a scent and a smell and calming things. And if you're at a 10, they try to bring you down to a place that's comfortable. So maybe say like a 3, it doesn't bother me anymore. And it can be weeks of a process to get to that place. I'm going to roll up my windows because I feel really bad.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
I feel like it's a lot of background noise, so I apologize.
Our magician behind the scenes, I'm sure, can address that. He's our magician, so no problem.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I got to the point where just EMDR I did a lot of talk therapy, but I also didn't like how I could go to talk therapy and they justify some of my actions that I knew my actions weren't okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So EMDR was kind of like my next step to figure everything out. And that is what literally saved me. It's what took away all the guilt and the shame from my childhood and blaming myself for so long. And it's what allowed me to forgive my parents, because I was like, if they were doing the best they could with what they had.
Yes.
And it was unfortunate circumstances, but I could separate. It had never had anything to do with me, and they were coping the ways that they knew how to cope.
From their own childhood trauma and from generational trauma, right? It always goes back and back and back. And so, yes, having that compassion, not just for yourself, but for your parents too, is huge in that healing process.
Well,
I like how you phrase that. We're all just doing the best we can with the tools we have at the time. Mm-hmm. Right.
And as a parent ourselves, I think we can see through different eyes too.
Yeah.
I go back and change a lot. I would change so many things.
Yeah,
that was and towards the end of our marriage, I felt like I was really healed. And I think that's why I honestly felt like I outgrew my husband, because I continually was trying to just work on myself and do better and be better. And I finally hit this point where I just felt good on my own and learning about myself and, like who I was as a person. And
sounds like you really took back your power in this time.
I did.
Yeah.
And this is where the story will become interesting.
Okay. Well, it's already, you've already got me wrapped around your finger. I just can't believe all that you've been through.
Yeah.
And that you're still smiling this gorgeous, beautiful smile. Look at her, risers and thrivers. Look at her. Isn't she gorgeous? And you can tell she shines. She truly shines from within, right? We really can get to that point. Look at all that she's been through, and we really can get to that point of self-love, self-acceptance, to shine from within, just like she's doing. And it's not like she's over her hardship, but she still shines because she's really, truly happy in who she is as a person and what she's overcome. And she looks back on it with pride. And I just think this is super inspirational. Please keep going. Sorry.
No, thank you. So towards the end of our marriage, I was thinking things were progressing, and we were talking about adopting my sister's baby because she struggled with addiction for 15 years. And I told her, I'm like, I'll take care of this little girl. I had a dream about this little brown-haired little girl before I even knew my sister was pregnant. And we were all prepared for that. So we got her, and she had a lot of medical conditions. and I took her in she was in the NICU. We took her home, had her 3.5 months. And then the bio dad came back around and he didn't even know we had her.
Mm.
So he had done everything that he needed to do to show that he wanted to be a part of her life. We just weren't in the know of all this.
I see.
So my ex-husband and I had to make the decision to place her back with her bio dad. And I, as a mother, and having those feelings and going through those sleepless nights and connecting with a child that you think is yours or will be yours,
that you consider as yours, yes,
was probably one of the most painful things I have ever gone through.
Mm.
And my kids have had to go through thinking that was their little sister.
Of course.
Saying goodbye to her was just heartbreaking, and probably the one thing I haven't processed as much as I would like, but it's just so deep.
Mm-hmm.
Because it came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when I hit this point of, okay, well, kind of angry at God. Like, I'm really trying here.
Yeah.
And you keep doing this to me, and I can't even get through this with my ex-husband. Like, I can't talk to him. I can't connect because just communication wasn't there. So I really felt alone through it all. And then comes, hold on, we were going through this divorce. Then comes my knight in shining armor, who's like gonna pick me up off the floor from this loss. Just everything that I've ever wanted and prayed for. Probably too good to be true, right? But in the moment, I craved this connection for so long, and I needed someone there for me for once.
Mm-hmm.
And he was there for me after I lost my niece and helped me kind of process this. And this probably was the one thing in my life that almost took me over the edge.
Wow.
And so
how old was she when she went back to her dad?
She was almost 4 months.
Aww.
But the man who came in to save me is what almost took me over the edge.
Oh.
Yes. So we connected on a level that I've never connected with somebody before. I had never felt this feeling in my life, and it was so intense. Too intense.
I see.
Too intense looking back at it. He knew everything about me. He was a mirror of me. And my qualities and the things I possessed. And I was like, I've never seen this in somebody else. And so our relationship, keep in mind, I didn't process my own divorce yet because I couldn't process the loss of my niece. Now I'm on to this new relationship that's making me feel everything that I've never felt in my life. And I'm thinking, this is God's answer to my prayers right here. And he gets out here. He moved here to be with me and my children. And
how many children did you have at this point?
4.
Okay.
Yes, just the 4 with my ex-husband. He got out here and it was good for a few weeks. But a mask started slowly slipping. But I was so tied to this man already. So I will use the word trauma bonded. Now looking back at the time, I didn't know I was. I was trauma bonded in a way that I don't think unless you've been there you could ever comprehend. Because once the mask started falling off and I could see parts of him that were scary. His anger, his how he can control if he was having a bad day and something little set him off.
And what would that look like?
Oh my goodness. in the beginning, it was more when he was drinking. So it would come out where I was choked out on many occasions. I was slapped across the face,
Wow.
spit on, hair pulled, thrown into furniture, in the walls.
And would your
Kept him,
kids be seeing this?
not in the beginning. They would be with their dad most of the time. That's where the mask, I'm saying the mask could
I
stay
see.
to be.
I
Um,
see.
so he could keep me in one spot because I, again, as a young girl, learned how to dissociate. But I also learned I didn't want to react. I didn't want to say hurtful words to someone I loved.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting there, and because he wasn't getting that reaction, I truly believe that's why it was as physical as it became, because I wasn't giving him that crazy reaction. And if someone's screaming in your face, you're going to go one of two ways. Either you're going to react back, or you're going to sink into where you learned how to be safe and survive
Coping
and dissociate.
mechanisms. It's all those survival mechanisms, right? They're learned behaviors, and they're really, really hard to part ways with. As soon as we enter into that stress, that fight or flight mode, we automatically, almost on autopilot, go back to all those same coping mechanisms, those same survival mechanisms. And we do so almost without even realizing it. And that's why having a coach like you're doing now, or like I do, is so important, right? Because those people in our lives can help draw our attention and bring that awareness back to those behaviors that we're doing, because it's all habitual, and breaking those habits is hard over time. We'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yes. And that was one probably coping mechanism that did save me, right? Like that dissociated, like,
Of
because you
course.
can't, they're rational or
Of
who's
course.
behaving that way. So the survival of just taking myself to that place, it shows us that we know when it is scary, our bodies are going to do what they need to do for us, but outside of that, they are not healthy or beneficial. So yes, that was the beginning, and I had been a broken person before, so it was easy for me to listen to his apologies the next day, his reasonings. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to do it again. I'll get help. It coming from a place of having to do that myself and all the hard work just to get to a healthy spot. I'm like, okay, I'll support him. I'll help him through this. And I guess when I noticed that I was kind of in the fight for my life is after I got pregnant. And I saw that pink pregnancy test, and I sank. I was sick. And he was upset that I wasn't happy. But I just thought, how is this even going to work?
Right.
And I hadn't processed my niece either. So I'm feeling guilty. And I'm like, what if I lose this one? And that is when I felt trapped. Not from my daughter, from this man, because he knew I wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't going anywhere. And controlling behavior. And again, when you get out of it and you look back and put all the pieces together, you're like, how did I let this go? But when you're in it, you cannot see it for what it is.
Of course. And that feeling of being trapped is probably one of the worst feelings in the world, right? And when we feel that alone, and we can all feel that sense no matter what we're going through in an abusive relationship. For me with cancer, I felt trapped. I felt institutionalized at that hospital, and you said earlier on in the show, you, in terms of your faith, and you were challenging God almost like, why does this keep happening to me, And I too felt the same way. I felt like every time I felt like I was overcome with this crazy tumultuous tidal wave, and then every time that I would come back up to the surface for a sip of air, I would finally make it back up to the surface. And then I'd be brutally pulled right back down again. And, that question, why, what have I done so wrong? But over time, it really turned around to what did I do so right? But that takes time, and that takes healing, and that takes awakenings. And it sounds like you're just about to get there. So please tell us about it.
Yes. So in the middle of all this, I lost my home because he had said he was paying rent. And this is probably the one thing that saved me. And probably the one thing now, hindsight, is why I'm still alive, because I shouldn't be, and neither should my daughter, statistically speaking, is we lost it and we had to move back to my parents. And that's when people started noticing little signs that we were living around.
Because the mask couldn't stay up, right? With other people there. He didn't have you all to himself.
Yeah, and that was hard for him. So the car became the very abusive place because it was outside of everybody, and I had times where I was like, I'm gonna just jump out this car door on a freeway, because you're just being screamed at, and you can only be screamed at for so long, and take care of 4 kids and try to get them not to hear things or see things, and try to not walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
So that was basically the entire pregnancy, the entire, even after I gave birth, the first night coming home from the hospital, he drugged me with my child in my arms and had smacked. I had this big open C-section wound, and something set him off with my other kids being excited about their baby sister. And I'm very protective of my kids. Don't talk to them disrespectfully. Don't get loud with them. And that made him mad that the siblings were excited. And I sat there with her in my arms and just took whatever came. And I had these awakening moments, because I finally called it what it was. I'm like, this is abuse. And once you say that word and you just say it for what it is, you can't turn your head to it anymore. And I knew my daughter, I knew that she deserved something better. And I could only think in my mind, I was like, what if someone treated my sweet girl this way? What if someone tried to make her feel so low and so broken? Is this the kind of man I would want in her life? Absolutely not. So why is it okay for me? It's not okay. So yeah, basically, I finally reacted to his abuse. I finally reacted to days on 0 sleep with my infant, taking care of her postpartum, and just consistently being abused to that extent. I finally reacted, and it came out like nothing I've ever seen. I wanted to end my life that night. I didn't want my kids to struggle anymore. I knew they would be safe with their dad, and they deserve something more than what I was giving them. But again, I felt so trapped. And then, I don't know, I'm here because of my baby girl, because I leave her with that man. And she is what saved me. So when he left because, remember, I'm living in my parents' home. I knew in that moment, I pulled her close to me and made the same promises I made my son when I was a single mom before. I'm going to do this. I don't care what it takes. So I walked myself into a domestic violence shelter.
Wow.
They gave me a lethality score, the highest score you can get, and told me if I go back to this man, pretty much they would take my kids, because they're going to be left without a mother. And I still had that slight trauma bond. I was getting out of it. I was awakening. But that, they tie you to your abuser when you get out, if you have a baby. So they say get out, but then you're tied to this man. And that's a huge struggle for, I think, many women to navigate, because it would just be, these people are very manipulative, and they're charming to the right people, right? So there's so many fears. But once I could break the barrier of having enough time away from him and feeling me again, feeling my kids' energy again, which was the most beautiful feeling in the world. And I'll never forget feeling it again for the first time, because I worked so hard to create a happy, safe, and loving environment for them. There was no looking back. It just, I'm going to do this, and we're going to do this. And we have never been so happy and healthy and just in our own energy and our element, where we're flowing together.
We just finally started to walk down a new path. Yeah,
and
that's beautiful.
A path that I could create, a path that I didn't have a man telling me. I went out and I got a car under my name and did all these little things that I'd never been able to do. And just slowly, piece by piece, building this confidence up. I never stopped working out during that relationship. I never stopped doing my self-help, my affirmations. That never changed. So that was a part of me. No matter how hard he tried to pull away from me, he couldn't get to it, because I had already planted those seeds, and the roots were deep. Now the roots were still there. I'm just growing them out.
What are some words of advice that you could give to women who are in that situation now, who need the courage to advocate for themselves? What would be, steps 1 and steps 2 that you would recommend to them to do today?
A safety plan is a must for any woman thinking of getting out of one of these relationships. Finding a support system is important. I found a beautiful group of women who all relate and go through the same thing. So even if you don't have family members, just people to help give you the courage and the power to take that next step.
So important.
It is. And then just
your kids. I'm guessing there would be a lot of online community forums where they could get that support. Yeah.
And I have one as well that I do once a week with women. So
sure. How would my audience access that?
I am on Riff, and that's the battles she won on Riff Live. And I go on there every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Okay.
So I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Where was I? No, I'm curious, so you start walking on this new path, and fitness was always important, and all your tools were always important. So how did you incorporate that into your life now as a social media influencer, as a fitness online coach, and as a motivational, personal development coach? How did you transfer all of that to doing what you're doing now and to shining so brightly? You really had to reinvent yourself.
I did. And I think incorporating it for me was more, I know I felt so alone in this, and I know there's women who are struggling in all these areas who need somebody. And I want to be that somebody, because I didn't have anybody when I was going through it. So just looking at these women who come to me and seeing how low their self-worth is, when I think they're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, when I can see things in them that they can't see about themselves. This became a passion of mine, along with wanting to be home with my babies and wanting to recreate this healthy life for them. But taking all this, knowing I did all this work, and if I can help other women build their confidence these ways and do similar things that have pulled me from the deepest, darkest places out, and I can share that knowledge, then that's what I want to do.
That's great. What are 3 steps that that someone can do today to adopt more self-love?
So 3 steps. For me, I never wake up and get on social media first. I put something good in my ear, whether that's a podcast.
Yes.
YouTube motivational speeches, something that starts my day off in a positive mindset and can plant the seeds and water areas of my brain that have never been watered.
We have to be the filter, right? Of what goes through our minds, what goes in our bodies, what goes through our souls. Like we really have to be the filter. For me, after I was sick and navigated all that I did, I find the news doesn't do that for me anymore. I'm going to learn what I need to learn in the news if it's important enough through other forums, but I can't read the newspaper anymore. I just can't do it. I just find it changes my mindset for the negative so quickly. So much is sensationalized, and but I love that, right? Being the filter of what goes through your mind right away, not social media, having something inspirational that drives you to a greater level of success. So important. Great tip.
And then one that I do with my kids, and my kids help build my self-love, right? So after we got done with that situation, every night we do affirmations, every morning and night. We do our affirmations, a gratitude journal, and then prayer. Every night, every morning. And that, when you start to repeat those things to yourself, it's uncomfortable. And it was uncomfortable for me and my kids in the beginning. But again, you're going to believe it. The tone and how you speak about yourself is going to start changing. You are that person. You are that person that all those things you are.
Yes.
You're going to know it.
Yes, that's so good. And we are the product of our habits. Our habits, our daily habits define who we are. And adopting those daily habits of affirmations and of positive self-talk and all those things that you started doing that with your children. And what a gift to do with your children, to provide them these lessons of resilience and resolve at such a young age that we all could have used way back when, because at the end of the day, no one adequately prepares us for those times when our lights go out and we're left standing there all alone in the bleak of the dark. No one does, right? And so for you starting to instill those tools in your own children, I think that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then one more. Let's see. I think, to me, I've always been big on changing your energy, which is important, right? We can start to feel really negative, and we can start to sit in it and want to wallow in the pain, which is okay for a brief moment. But if you can just pick yourself up for a minute, just for a minute, and do something that makes you feel good, if it's a walk, just changing that negative energy, because we are energy. And we can live at whatever vibrational level we want to. We can produce the endorphins we need. And for me, it's music. I love just dancing. I'll turn on happy music. And even if I'm not happy, I can just start, vibing and doing my thing. I feel like a different person after that. And it's not as heavy.
Yes. Yeah. Being aware, right? And we can all get entrenched in the complaints and, of how hard life can be, but switching back our mindset and shifting that mindset back to how beautiful life is at the same time is so important, and rather than devoting so much energy to the complaining process, if we chose, on the other hand, to devote that equal energy to something that serves us, like a walk, like happy music and a dance playlist, like anything that positively serves our being, then that can shift everything. So if we really focus on that energy state that we're bringing to ourselves and to others, I think that alone can be so impactful. And it all comes down to perspective, right? And the lens that we choose. And I too agree with you, Rachel. Like, I think it's so important to be able to create that safe space to really feel the hardship and to feel those hard emotions that come into. And I always say, like, I'm all about a happy playlist, but I also encourage a playlist that connects us with our hurt and connects us with our pain, because we can all feel so alone. But when we hear our pain in the lyrics of others, it instantly connects us to this greater world, that we are in it all together, that we all experience pain, no matter, if it's caused from cancer or illness or, abusive relationships. No matter what pain we're experiencing, it's a common thread that connects us all. And we can really hear that connection through lyrics and music. And so I really think that's important to create that safe space, to feel that hard emotion. But then, yes, switching it, actively being aware to switch when we're done and when we're ready to a better place through music, through sunshine outside, through a walk, and taking that proactive role in shifting our energy. It's so important. Great tips. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, first, sorry. Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, no, I just want to say everybody has that strength within them. Everybody holds that power. We are powerful human beings, and we are needed human beings. And you have a light that needs to be let out and just to shine, and everybody has it.
Amen. Yes. And Alicia, gosh, I can't agree with you more. Rachel, you are amazing. Such a beautiful soul. And yes, she is. Rachel, I can't thank you enough for being here with us today and for kicking off season 3 of the Rise Today Inspirational Podcast. You just emulate everything that we are here to do on the show. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Risers and Thrivers, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next recording. Join us in 2 weeks. All the best. Have a great day.